Hey everyone, welcome to video 47 of 100 Video Project. My name is Renee, and today I'll be interviewing Mr. Chris Large, the photographer based out of Calgary and Vancouver. Chris has been shooting movie stills for over 20 years, and today he's given me the opportunity to interview him about his career. How are you doing today, Chris?
Very well, thank you. Very well.
Okay, so my first question is, can you tell me more about your background shooting stills on movie sets?
My background. I had some history movies in a different area at a time, and I started doing photography as a hobby. This was in film days. I had to justify the amount of money that film was costing, so I started doing weddings and things like that. A producer slash production manager that I had worked with before heard that I was doing some photography, and he said, come out to a show I've got. I need somebody to fill in for one day. My guy is sick. And I had never done it before on set, but I had been on set lots, so I knew the whole structure and the hierarchy. So I went up for one day, and they liked it, invited me back for another day, and then another day, and it just kept on rolling. And in a couple of years doing that part-time, I had enough days built up in the union that I could join the union, and then retired from my regular job and went 100% full-time as a movie shooter all over the world.
Wow. So what was your first job then, other than photography?
It was a series that was done in Calgary, just outside of Calgary, called North of 60, which is still running on the Aboriginal television network. It was a CBC production that went for 6 or 7 years.
Wow. So I went on your website and I noticed there was a lot of fire in the pictures. Were they the main source of light, or did you have like additional lights in the background?
Well, I don't do any lighting on set. That's the director of photography. He sets the lighting, and then I work around that. Unless I'm doing special portrait work or advertising work, then with the actors, then I take them aside and light them. There's a lot of fire on my website because I've shot a lot of explosions, and people like to see that kind of stuff. And it's sometimes quite hard to get the right exposure and composition when you don't know what's going to happen with an explosion.
Yeah, true, because it just happens in 1 second.
Yeah. And so I've gotten fairly good at talking with special effects and getting their estimation on how big the fireball is going to be, and so on, and where's the safe area. Sometimes I'll set up a camera with a remote that's protected, and then I'll be back quite a distance away and firing the camera remotely, just out of safety. So,
has anyone ever like gotten hurt on during the explosions?
Nothing that I know, seriously, not on shows I've worked at.
Okay.
I mean, people have been injured in the business all sorts of different ways, but I've been fortunate. I've been around good special effects guys and experienced people, and I've been around that kind of stuff myself to be safe about it.
What was your first camera like?
My first camera was a Canon AE1, I think, which is a film camera. Because when I started shooting stills for movies, it was all film, and it was all slide film that you shot. So that's a very narrow exposure. It doesn't have much latitude. Your metering has to be pretty much spot on. You have to know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just look at the screen afterwards and say, well, that looks pretty good, or you don't know until 2 days later when you get your slides developed, and then they get back to you, and then you look at it and see if it's any good or not. Digital has taken a lot of the guesswork out of all photography.
Yeah, that's very true. How did you begin then, experimenting? Did you have to spend a lot of money on film and just keep trying?
It was a little bit of a hobby. I had 2 young children that I liked to photograph, and I would make notes on every shot about what the exposure was and what my lens was. And then when I got the pictures back, then I would look at them and realize what I could do better.
Yeah,
And
that's good.
there's a lot of experimentation, just shooting lots and lots and lots.
What do you think is essential camera gear for beginners?
Well, but if you're talking about shooting stills on TV or movie sets, what's required?
Yeah.
Okay, the most important thing is that you have a mirrorless camera, and all the manufacturers now are making mirrorless cameras as opposed to single lens reflexes cameras where the mirror actually flopped open and to make the exposure. And the reason for that is sound. That a conventional camera makes noise. You can hear the mirror, the shutter. So for years and years, because that's all there was, we had those cameras inside a metal box. It was all lined with foam. It was a specially made piece of equipment called a blimp. And if you Google blimp or camera blimp, you'll see what we were up against. So the camera housing was quite big, very like a underwater housing that you see. And it was very heavy, and still you could sometimes hear the camera just a little bit. You couldn't get at any of the controls without opening the back of the box, and then you could adjust your things. So mirrorless is the number one prerequisite for doing this kind of shooting, because it is completely 100% silent. You can't be distracting the actors. Camera noise would be distracting the actors, messing up their dialogue, and generally just taking people off for the distraction.
Right, that's true. That's true. Um, can you get a mirrorless camera from a camera store, or do you have to rent it from
Oh no!
production?
Oh no! You can buy mirrorless cameras at Walmart.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh,
not necessarily good enough quality,
oh,
um, but for starting out, you don't need. If you're just doing it for the experience, you don't need to spend a lot of money. Easily under you can get good quality for easily under $1,000.
okay.
Now a top rate rig like what I use, the body will run you $6,000 or $7,000, and then lenses will cost you another $1,000 each after that. But if you're making your living at it, which I am, then when you think of starting a small business, because we're all freelance, so we're all running a small business, my total investment in the business and equipment is $50,000, which for running a business is not very much money. But
Wow.
as a person starting out, spend $500 even on a mirrorless camera and a couple of lenses or a zoom lens, so that you can get started.
So, what movies would you recommend for others to learn about imagery and composition?
Oh, that's a tough question because there's so much out there. You have to understand composition and imagery. You have to look at it and
Mhm.
see what you like and what you don't like. There's lots of critics and so on that you can read, and you can go online and there's YouTube videos on different styles. But I mean, that's a really, really hard question to answer. And it's when you're looking at other movies, a lot of the old movies are really quite interesting. If you watch some of Alfred Hitchcock movies, because he was an innovator, he was one of the first persons to actually physically dolly a camera
Mhm.
around, which is very common. Now, when you watch a movie like The Shining with Jack Nicholson, which was one of the very first movies to use a Steadicam, which is a device for hand holding a camera and keeping it very steady, and doing multiple moving shots. There's a great shot that's worth looking at in a movie called Boogie Nights, it's a little raunchy, but it's got a shot that starts out a wide shot and a road with a bunch of businesses and really colorful businesses. I think Miami, and the camera is obviously in a helicopter, and it comes closer and closer and closer and closer, and then on the edge of the road, and then the camera. What's happened is the guy with the Steadicam gets out of the camera, walks across the street with traffic going before him and afterwards, walks across the street into the nightclub, and then pans around continuously, and that's done as one continuous take. And it's a great visual to look at. The same as in The Shining, the sequence where the little boy is riding his three-wheel tricycle around the halls of the hotel, and the camera's following him, or he's chasing the camera. So those are distinct styles that you can look at. But a lot of the older films really stand up well now. It's just, you just got to do some research and get an idea on some of the great all-time directors and cinematographers.
Yeah, I haven't watched The Shining yet, but I have watched a couple of Alfred Hitchcock movies, and I remember seeing the birds. Those are real birds, right?
Yeah.
How do they train birds?
I don't know how they did that.
Okay. So, do you have any like books or works of art that you use as reference? Like, I know a lot of photographers like Rembrandt, like they like looking at paintings. So do you have any like works of art that you use as reference?
No, because I am generally not creating an image to stand alone as a work of art or as a print you would look at. My images are for advertising and promotion of a movie. So I'm shooting in the same situation as the movie. My shots are taken while we're making that movie. So the backgrounds, like on my website, all those backgrounds are the movie background that we were at. That if we're at a Western village, a town, I use that as my background if I'm doing separate shots with the actors. Otherwise, whatever the film camera or the movie camera is shooting, I'm shooting alongside it or very close to it and getting the same kind of stuff that the movie camera is getting.
Okay, I see. So that's pretty challenging because you only get one shot, right? Or
most times they'll do more than one take.
oh, okay, that's good.
If it's a big explosion, then it's usually only once. But everything else, the director may not like just the timing of the dialogue, or one actor muffs the line, and so they got to they have to do it over again. That doesn't affect me. I can get what I need sometimes on the very first take, and then I don't bother shooting the same thing 50 times.
Do you stay there the whole time, or do you just take the picture and like leave?
No, I'm on set from generally beginning to end. Because we'll be doing different scenes all day long, and they'll change the order of them sometimes, and I have to be prepared for that. Sometimes at the end of the day I can leave a little bit earlier if we're in the last scene and I know I've got what I need to deliver, then I can leave a little bit earlier. But generally speaking, I'm there all day.
Okay.
They're long days. 12 hours is considered normal.
And you mostly do your work in Canada now?
The last couple of years I've been in Canada because of COVID.
Oh, yeah.
I've shot in Germany, in Fiji. I've been in England, shot in China, Romania, which was fun, Mexico. So all over the world, everywhere except the United States.
Okay. Do you have a reason why not United States?
Unions.
Oh, okay.
I'm in the same union. Virtually every serious film in North America is union. It's signs a union contract with IATSE, which is the International Alliance of Stage and Theatrical Employees, and that's to protect us. The union forces the companies to give us turnaround between days, so we're not shooting until midnight Monday and have to be back at or we're shoot at 4 a.m. on Monday or Tuesday morning, and then be back at 9 o'clock the next day. It forces the producers to give us that time. It forces us, the producers, to give us an adequate time to eat. Some shows, because they're losing the light or anything else, they want to just keep shooting, and you don't get a break, especially if you're in the camera department, because we can't leave the set if the shooting is going on. So the union in the States figures, because of their labor laws, that if I come into the States as a Canadian, I'm taking a job away from an American. So so they don't. It's very rare that they let us come in. Our labor laws are different. They come into Canada, but it's not nearly the same as us going in the States.
Okay.
But shooting in Europe and Mexico and place like that, they're not under the same union control. So, that's why we can work internationally. We just can't work in the States much.
Oh, that's very interesting. I had no idea. I thought that you could just like go to the States whenever, but I didn't know that unions had that restriction.
Well, it's between the unions, but also just the basic labor laws that are different in the States.
Okay. So you've been talking a lot about traveling. Where was your favorite place to shoot stills?
That's hard to say. I spent 3 months in Romania with Kevin Costner with Hatfields and McCoys, which wasn't my favorite place, but it was certainly really interesting and eye-opening. Mexico was interesting to shoot. One of the nicest shows I did for scenery-wise was a show that we did in Fiji, and staying on a resort right on the ocean. That was pretty cool. China was pretty interesting. It's hard to pick one favorite. They're all got something going for them, one way or another.
Did you get to see any like haunted castles in Romania?
Yes, we were shooting. It was actually a mini series, and it's worth watching too. It's very well done. It's the Hatfields and McCoys, which a lot of the younger generation, meaning you probably and a bunch of others, don't realize it or don't know about it. But it was a very famous feud in the 1800s in the States between two families, the Hatfields and McCoys, and it turned into basically a civil war. Very, very worthwhile historically looking at it. It was quite a challenge.
Okay.
But it was one of our locations. So it takes place in the 1800s. It was scouted originally to shoot in Alberta, about $50 million. Then someone decided that they could do it in Romania, which has a very similar terrain, parts of Romania to Alberta, with rolling hills and prairies and stuff, and they could do it for half the price in Romania. So that's where it went. Our first half of the show was shot in the province, if you like, of Transylvania. So that's where all the castles are and those kind of things. So on our weekends, that's what we would do, is go explore the different castles and fortresses and churches. It was pretty cool.
That's amazing. Yeah, I
look it up though. It should be on one of the on Netflix or Prime or someone.
Yeah, I'll check it out.
Hatfields and McCoys with Kevin Costner.
How did you find opportunities to get on set?
Well, just how I explained it, that I was asked to fill in, and they liked my work, and it just kept on growing. And this is very much, the business is very much based on recommendations. So the first show I did was for CBC. First big show I did was a series was for CBC. Then let's say CTV had a series, and they would often, their publicity people and their photography department would know the person at CBC, and they'd just ring them up or email them, say, hey, do you know anybody that's any good in Alberta? And they would say, yeah, we just finished working with Chris Large. We like his work. So it's all referral based, and I get a lot of calls or emails. And my favorite was one was for the Hatfields and McCoys. I didn't know that was shooting or anything else. I had worked with Kevin before, and I got an email out of the blue saying, hi, my name is Bill Smith. I'm the photo director for A&E Networks. We've got a show in Romania that you've been recommended for, and Kevin Costner has approved you. Are you interested in going? And as it turned out, I was free at the time, so I jumped at the chance and did it. So A&E had talked to someone. He knew somebody at CBS, and he said to somebody at CBS or Disney or whoever do you know anybody actually anywhere who's really good at westerns?
Mm.
And a couple of them said, well, yeah, the western guy in Canada is probably Chris Large. So, because I've done so many westerns.
Hmm. So I have to ask, like, how did you meet your first reference, like the first person who referred you?
Well, that was the show that I did for CBC, and
Oh, okay.
it sort of fans out from there.
Okay.
Because one tells another, and then they use you, and then they tell somebody else, and
Right.
it's a very, the movie industry is a huge industry, but it's a very small world in the sense that there might, in the United States, in the upper leagues, there's maybe only 20 photo directors, or 20 or 30 people that do the hiring of set photographers, and they
Mm.
mostly all know each other.
Hmm.
So they're always comparing notes on do you know somebody that's really good at underwater stuff, or do you know somebody that does westerns, or because it's shooting westerns is different than shooting a Hallmark Christmas movie,
Hmm.
which I've done both.
Mm. Did you enjoy one more than the other?
I don't. They're different experiences.
Hmm.
One of the most enjoyable ones is one that I can't even talk about yet,
Oh, okay.
because it was so different from anything I'd ever done before.
Oh, that's amazing.
It was 180 degrees different than anything I had done, and I I can't explain it any more than that because
Okay.
it hasn't been released yet, and we signed very heavy non-disclosure agreements.
Okay. That's okay. I won't ask about it then.
Yeah, but I enjoy shooting westerns. I enjoy one of the favorite shows that I've done is the Fargo series. And if you haven't watched Fargo, the series, you really should.
Is that shot in Canada, right?
Yeah, in Calgary.
Oh, in Calgary. Oh, okay.
We shot 3 seasons of it in Calgary. The 4th season was shot in Chicago, and I don't think the 4th season was nearly as good as the ones in Calgary. Season 1 of Fargo is my favorite. Billy Bob Thornton, who is just fantastic. It's worth looking at. That's a show that's got a really unique style to it. It's got a certain feeling to it that when you watch the first season and then you see the second season, and instantly from the second it starts, it's Fargo. It's got such a feel to it.
Hmm. Where can I access that?
Fargo should be on again, streaming on Netflix or Prime or whoever.
So do you have any stories to inspire new photographers?
Set photography is one of the hardest niche photography markets there is to get into.
Mm-hmm.
I can pick up a camera. I can be just Joe Blow, pick up a camera and say, I'm a wedding photographer, and go out and shoot weddings. And maybe not know what I'm doing, but shoot weddings.
Right.
I can pick up a camera and say, I'm a landscape photographer, or I'm a sports photographer. You can't just pick up a camera and say, I'm a unit stills photographer.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's very hard to get in, the union requirements are quite tight to get in. You can't just apply and they look at your work and say, yeah, that's pretty good. There's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, because you said references, right, are what matters.
Well, and you have to have experience
Mm.
in non-union shows or as a permit by the union. You have to be able to prove that being an on-set photographer, the photography is in some ways is the smallest part. If you're a good photographer, that's taken care of. It's the understanding the dynamics and the politics and the pecking order and the hierarchy of the set. There's a very rigid sort of code on sets that if you're the third grip, it's not cool to walk up to the lead actor and start a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a junior lighting technician, it's not cool to walk up to the director and start talking to them. The director's got way too many things on his mind.
Right.
a set photographer, I have access and great access to all the actors, to the producers, the directors, the cinematographer. So I have to be able to pick and choose my spots when I want to talk to an actor, because I have to. I have the actor has to trust me. He has to know that I know what I'm doing. He has to know that I'm not going to distract him. The director knows that if I ask for something, that it's important, but I won't waste time. Sometimes there'll be a scene which, because of the space limitations or whatever, I can't get what I need. So I will go to the first AD, or I'll go to the director and say, listen, I need 15 seconds at the end of the shot, so I can get it. And in my case, almost always they'll give it to me because they trust me, and I've been around so long. When I say I need 15 seconds, I don't mean I need a couple minutes. I need 15 seconds. I know what I want the shot to look like. My exposure will be set. Everything will be set. I step in, and I've talked to the actor before and said, listen, I need 15 seconds if I can get the shot. And 9 times out of 10, they trust me, and they'll say, sure, let's do it. Because, we're spending on a big show, we could be spending on crew costs and so on, $10,000 an hour. So that's, in a 12-hour day, $120,000 just for that one day. I can't be holding the production up. They can't be waiting for me. So that 15 seconds, I never abuse it. And I go in, I'll get 20 shots in that 15 seconds, and then I'll say, thank you very much. That's all I need. And I don't ask for that very often. So that's the kind of thing that you have to know how to do before you get into the sort of the big leagues, into the union shows. You've got to understand that whole power of dynamics.
Right. And also, it's just like you have to use your time wisely too.
Yeah, you can't waste any time. You've got a specific job to do. You can't. A lot of times you're using the same space as the boom guy, and so you got to be able to coordinate with him, or the camera operator. The camera's on a dolly. Well, the last thing you want to be is in the way of that dolly when it moves, and he has to stop, and that ruins the shot. So that's why I watch the rehearsals. I see where the camera is moving and what's going on, and then I will talk to the people. I'll talk to the dolly grip and say, I see you're going to come to this edge. I'm going to be right behind there, but I'm always watching out of the corner of my eye in case they change. Touch wood, I've never been hit by a dolly, but other people have. It's embarrassing, So that's why I say it's a pretty complex job. I mean, anybody can go out and start doing street photography, and who knows what you get, but there's not a lot of rules.
Right.
Just going out or taking landscapes or taking flower pictures. There's not a lot of rules. With set photography, there's a whole lot of rules.
And the only way to learn those rules is to get on set?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's why the people making the small indie movies, the student films, that's where you get your experience. Because there's a lot more latitude. On a small indie or a student film, an actor isn't going to throw you off set because you got accidentally into his eye line. On the shows that I do with some actors, if you get in their eye line, they will throw you off set.
Eye line?
Yeah.
What does that mean? Like?
Well, how do I explain this? When the actor is facing the camera and he's delivering a speech to the actor who is literally right here. Okay, so that's like called an overshot. So if I'm standing right beside the movie camera, the guy, the actor who is delivering his lines to the camera or to the actor that's right beside the camera, if he sees me there too, and I move, that can be distracting to him. So that's being in the eye line. And actors will throw you off set. Some actors will throw you off set for being in their eye line and distracting them.
Can you get fired from that or no?
Yes, you can. Yes.
Oh my gosh, that's pretty strict.
Well, the actors run the show, and if I'm distracting Kevin Costner and it's affecting his performance, then he wants to make sure that doesn't happen again.
Mm-hmm.
And I talk to actors before I start, because I've got to have their trust. I'll say, I've been at this a while. I'm pretty good about eye lines. If I accidentally get in your line, you'll notice it on the rehearsal. All you have to do is just shake your head at me, and I'll know that I'm in your eye line. And that hardly ever happens because I'm good at that.
Mm-hmm.
The last show that I just finished was Billy the Kid, a big Western. Spent 4 months on it. Our lead actor, we talked about eye lines, and he said, they're usually not a big deal, and if I do see it and it's distracting, I'll just give you a nod or a shake. And we did one scene where it was quite an intense scene, and I'm literally over the shoulder of the actor or over his shoulder, and he's looking at the actor, and I'm right behind the actor that he's looking at, right just off an inch to the side, shooting away. And I knew he had changed it from the rehearsal, so I knew that I was in his eye line. And we went through the take and got the take, and I went up to him afterwards and said, "Geez, I was in your eye line there. Sorry, I changed it the last second." And he says, "I didn't even notice you were there." That's how still I was, and that's how focused he was. I wear all black clothing. My cameras are black. I'll even wear a black baseball hat or a black toque, and as inconspicuous as I can be. There's a story that I tell about shooting in Romania. It's a big cast. I mean, it's a heavyweight cast. I mean, with Kevin Costner, of course. And the producer had a person, young girl, who was doing BTS, which is behind the scenes shots of. She was doing behind the scenes video of making of the show, and she was quite inexperienced. And so the producer asked me as a favor if I would help her out a bit and just guide her, and basically she could, wherever I was standing, it was probably okay that she could stand. And she was in her mid-20s and just drop dead gorgeous. She could be a model, but just drop dead gorgeous, and a nice woman, but very colorful, very. She had
Distracting?
very long white blonde hair,
Mm-hmm.
dressed very, very nice, lots of makeup and everything else. And a couple of days of shooting, the producer came to me and said, "Chris, we've got a problem with this." I wanted to use her name, with this person. And I said,
Mm-hmm.
what has she done? And he says that the actors are being distracted by her because she's so colorful and so good looking.
Wow.
She's got a tone. Well, she was.
Mm-hmm.
She wore these bright, flashy colors, and I said, he says, "You got to tell her to turn it down,
Tone
way,
it
way down,
down.
or she can't be on set."
Wow.
So I took her aside and and explained to her that it's nothing personal, but she's not there to attract attention.
Right.
That she was to get herself a black toque, stocking hat. She was, and I said, if you don't have the stuff, you leave set right now and you go and buy it.
Okay.
Black jacket, black pants, black boots, black gloves, and no makeup.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can work under those conditions, fine. If not, then you have to. That's the only way you can work.
Right.
And I think at first she was a little bit shocked, and then she understood what was going on. I mean, during the middle of the take, you can't sit there and be whistling to yourself,
No.
right?
Yeah, it's
Because
gonna
it's
make sound.
distracting. And visual distractions can be just as big as
Audio.
audio, and so she toned her act down totally 100%, and finished the rest of the show. And I'm still in touch with her, and she's doing well.
That's good.
So, but that's the kind of thing that you have to know about, and the only way you know about that is to do it on a much smaller scale and work your way up.
Work your way up. Well, it's good that you told her about that, and you made her aware of that situation.
Well, I mean, I was supposed to be looking after her, and maybe I should have twigged on that earlier. about
Mm.
her being a distraction. But I'm so focused on what I do that I don't necessarily notice their reaction to other people, the actor's reaction to other people.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the hardest businesses to get in,
Mm-hmm.
but it's financially it's very rewarding.
Mm.
With the unions, the pay is quite good. Lots of overtime. They're renting your gear from you, kit rental, and there's never 2 days the same on set. It's not like sitting in a factory
Mm-hmm.
on a conveyor belt doing you're constantly having to think, how am I going to do this scene? Is it an important scene? Because some scenes, if it's two people sitting at a kitchen table having breakfast, we have an expression, I doubt that's going to make the poster.
Mm.
But if it's some of the shots like you see on my website with them walking away from the fire, or Mila Kunis when she's
Oh, I saw Mila Kunis, yeah.
yeah, I mean that shot did make the poster.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to pick what's important and what's not, and if it's not important, don't waste a lot of time on it.
So how many of your stills are seen by the public for one movie?
Oh, that's a good question. I take, on the average, I take 1,000 pictures a day. If it's a big action sequence, I've shot 2,000 pictures a day.
Wow.
And well, what's happening is I'm shooting at 10 frames a second, right? Because when I'm shooting actors, I want to make sure I get the shot where their eyes are open, that they're not in the middle of a sentence, and their mouth is open. So by doing bursts, you ensure that you're going to get a better, get one picture that's going to be good. So I shoot, let's say on a day that I shoot 1,000, I will narrow that down before I deliver it. I will narrow that down to, one of the things I tell the actors when I first meet them, I tell them that I'm the first one that's going to see these pictures. I get to do the edit, the cull, meaning getting rid of the garbage, before anybody else sees it. If I have a picture that makes you look bad or me look stupid, meaning that one eye of his is closed or something, or my focus isn't spot on, I says I will delete those, and the studio will never even know they existed.
Mm-hmm.
So that usually helps to get some trust from the actors. So I've taken 1,000 shots for one day. There's 10 days for one episode, or say 5 days for one episode of a TV series. So 5 days, so that's 5,000 pictures I've shot.
Mm-hmm.
For that one episode, I will narrow that 5,000 down to probably 200, because a lot of the stuff I shoot, when you look at it, you realize that it's a duplicate, or it's just not good enough to make the final cut. Maybe I'll narrow it down to 500. The studio will get it, and that 500, and they will take that 500 and narrow it down for that one particular episode to 50. And then from there, out of that 50, maybe half of them will get used. So that 50 is their final cut, but they'll only use half of those. So 25 photos for one episode may get used. So the ratio of what I shoot to what is finally used is phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the nature of the business, because when I'm shooting, a lot of times we don't know that the nature of the publicity is going to go. So I've got to give them lots of options. We don't know if they're going to market it as well. If I'm shooting a Christmas movie for Hallmark, we know exactly how it's going to be marketed.
Mm-hmm.
It's a woman who's having relationships problems, and her husband has died. She meets a new man. It's Christmas time. He happens to be just divorced, and they're gonna be kissing by a Christmas tree. And we all know exactly, every one of the Hallmark movies, the Christmas movies, is exactly the same that way. So that helps when we're shooting it, because I'm not worried about them going on some kind of offbeat bent with it. It's not.
Yeah, like you know what to expect.
Yeah.
Right.
But on this last one that I did, I don't know how they're going to market it. because he's got some romantic interests. There's all sorts of gunfights. There's all sorts of action stuff going on. So I've got to cover everything, because when they start putting it together, they really might want to play up the romantic level of it. I mean, and nobody knows until they start saying it. So I've got to make sure that that's covered.
Okay.
And they may not use any of it, of that particular part. They may say the romance is not how we want to market this. We want to market this as a gunfighter.
Okay. So.
And if you don't know who Billy the Kid is,
I don't. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, look it up. He was very infamous American gunfighter.
Yeah, I'm learning a lot right now.
Yeah.
So how do you take an ordinary looking image and then make it more stunning? Like, how do you tell the difference between something that looks all right, but it's like it could be better? Like, how do you make it look better?
If you're talking about at the time or afterwards?
At the time of shooting, and maybe both.
Well, it's usually at the time. It's by making sure you've got the best angle, and that's the height. You know, because some shots you want to be low, looking up more. Some shots you want to be eye level. Some shots you want to be looking down, and how you frame it. You know, right now if my image is center punched, is what it's called. Is center punched. I'm the interest that your eye is drawn to, and I'm in the middle of the frame, so that's center punched. A lot of times, it's a better idea to have the frame up, because there might be something interesting in the back, or a nice neutral background. So sometimes it's the angle that you want, and sometimes it's where the character is looking. Maybe you don't want them looking straight at the lens. You want them looking off in the distance. So it's just something that you gotta figure out. You gotta know.
And that takes experience.
Yeah. And as far as afterwards, I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
I deliver what's called raw images, and they do all the post work on it. I just have to make sure that they're in focus and sharp and framed properly, and not making me look stupid.
Or you making them look stupid. Yeah. It all looks good together.
Yeah. I want my actor to look as mean as possible, or as angry as possible, or as happy as possible. You know, I want those moments, and you know, whatever emotion that he's portraying in the movie, I want to be able to capture that same emotion.
So have you always wanted to work in film, or did you have different dreams when you were younger as a photographer?
Oh, if you want the whole story, I had no interest in photography or films at the start. I went through university in technical theater, and I left university, and there just wasn't a lot of work for sound technicians, theater sound technicians. So I managed to get my way into a TV station, and worked there, and then branched off, got interested in documentary films as doing sound. So I did documentary films and then commercials. And then I started mixing movies. I was the sound mixer on a number of TV movies and features. Was nominated for a couple of fairly important awards.
Cool.
And I won't go into
it's okay.
them without, because it sounds a little bit sort of just too much. But anyway, and then got out of the industry completely. When I got nominated for these awards, I realized that the challenge wasn't there anymore. And I went on a whole different career, like 180-degree different career. I was a policeman for 20 years. And
I think I remember reading that somewhere. Might have been Facebook.
Yeah. And then while I was doing that, that's when the producer called me, because he heard that I was doing photography on the side, and asked me to, because I knew my way around the film set from being a mixer. So when I retired from the police department, I just made the jump and went. I spent 5 years part-time, just a day here and a day there. And then And then when the opportunity arose as I retired, I went full time with the movies, and it just took off. I
Yeah.
was first couple of years I was just so busy. I was away from home constantly, and then it's sort of evened out. And now since COVID, I've been home the whole time, but doing shows here.
So Chris, we've been talking for quite a long time. I think it's almost been an hour. So I'm going to ask you, do you have any final thoughts?
This is a grandfather's advice to his grandkids, and the advice that I gave to my kids, and now they're going to give to their grandkids. I hope that if you want to do something, it's way better to hit it hard, go at it, see if you can do it, and then even if you don't, then, because I think the last thing you want to do is sit back when you're, say, 60 years old and say, geez, I'm too old to try this now. I wish I would have tried it when I was younger, and that's what I did when I joined the police department. I didn't know whether I'd like it or not. It was something I'd always wanted to do, but I was determined to try it because I didn't want to be 60 years old and be too old to ever be a policeman, and really regret not at least taking the time to try it. And as it worked out, 6 months into the job, I knew that I loved it, and that I was going to continue it, and I wasn't going to go back to sound, because I could have. That was my fallback. I could always go back to television or sound. But 6 months in, I knew that I loved it, and I had a great career and enjoyed most of it. And so I have no regrets now that way. That there's still things I'd like to do, but nothing like I wanted to at least try that. So that's my advice to the younger ones that are out there trying to figure out what they want. If there's something you want to do, at least try it. Okay.
I love that advice. That was great.
Okay, good.
Well, I hope you enjoyed our talk today, because I certainly did, and I learned so much from you. I'm really happy I did this. I'm actually very scared of interviewing people, but I'm glad I got to meet you today.
Oh, you did a great job.
Thank you, Chris.
No, the time flew by. It was really good.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
You have a good
Goodbye.
day. Yeah. See you later.